We know what paraphrasing is. What we want to know is how to do it. And it sounds simple, but it's actually not that simple because there are a few things we have to think about. So let's go through these little tips and concepts, and I'll try to be as clear as possible. Okay, this is my definition. And it's not that different from what you just told me, but just my words. So to repeat something written or spoken using different words or different language. But here's the trick. Often in a simpler and shorter form that makes the original meaning clearer. And I would also say, when you paraphrase, you can change the tone. You can make something funny. You can make something written funny, make it serious. You keep the main idea, but you can change it into your words, but also your tone. It's a bit more of an advanced idea, but it is possible. So you could take something very serious and paraphrase it to make it sound funny. You're allowed to do that. But for now, let's just focus on this basic idea. Why would you paraphrase? Well, one reason is to make it simpler and shorter, right? But there's a few things we have to think about when we do this. Especially if you're reading something that somebody else wrote and you're going to paraphrase it, you have a couple of responsibilities. So there are basically 3, sometimes 4 key responsibilities of a paraphrase. And what I mean is these are things you must do. You must think about these. It's your responsibility when you paraphrase. Your responsibility number 1, you should change the language a lot. Okay? Don't just change one word. You have a responsibility to change the language a lot, to make it your language. Especially later if you do academic writing in college, this is very important. If you borrow someone's words from a book and use their ideas in your essay, you have to change the language a lot. Not a little bit, a lot. It has to become your language, your writing, your words. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so responsibility number 1, you need to change the paraphrase a lot. You need to change the language a lot. But even though you change the language a lot, you have to keep the main idea. So change the language, keep the idea. Also, if you have really specific terms or vocabulary and numbers, can't change those. Okay? So I call these key terms or key words. So for example, if your topic is pizza and you write a whole essay about pizza, use the word pizza. That is your topic keyword. Don't use a synonym for that. Right? Identifying the most important words that really relate to your topic, you want to repeat those words. You want to change other words, but you want to preserve those key terms. So if you read a book all about pizza, and you're going to paraphrase it, use the word pizza. It's too important. If you start talking about something else, if you change the word pizza to, I don't know, like bread, cheese, and tomato pie, it sounds like a completely different topic, right? So responsibility number 2 is important. Preserve or keep the keywords, the key terms, and data, numbers, statistics, you can't change those. Otherwise, you change the whole idea. We want to keep the basic idea, okay? So this is tricky, right? Now we have 2 responsibilities. We have to change the language, But we have to keep the idea the same or similar. We have to preserve the idea. It's tricky, but I'll show you how to do it. Number 3, this is for academic writing in college. You must cite your source. So for example, if you're reading what do we have here? We have let's say we have a big academic book and we borrow some idea from here and we paraphrase it and put it in our essay. Whoever reads your essay needs to know where you got that information, especially if it involves special research or studies. Your teacher knows you didn't do the research. You're too young. You have to cite your source. Now, we're not going to talk about that today. You'll learn that when you learn academic writing, but that's really important because this person who wrote the book, they spent a lot of years researching that information. You can't just steal it, right? So paraphrasing is a way of borrowing ideas and turning it into your language. So it's your language, but it's not your idea. You borrowed the idea. And ideas are property. Somebody else has the right to that property, okay? So number 3, we're not going to talk about today, but it's something you will encounter later. Okay, so let's say that number 1 and number 2 are most important for us. Change the language a lot, but keep the main idea. Preserve it. If the person in the book has a good idea and you want to paraphrase it, it's because you like their idea, but you want to put it in your words. How do we do that? Okay. Other people may have different ideas about this, but I've taught writing for so long that I've sort of recognized the patterns. And I believe there are 6 techniques that you can use to paraphrase. You can use one alone. You can use number 1 and number 4. You can use all of them together. But you need to use these. I recommend as you get practice with them, use them all together. Use a combination of them. Use technique number 1 and number 3. Maybe number 2 and number 4. Combine. Okay, the 6 paraphrasing techniques. And remember what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the language, but keep the idea. Number 1, the most obvious one. I think you all know this. Use synonyms. Change 1 or 2 words in a sentence, right? If you don't know a synonym, you can look up a word in the thesaurus. I think we've talked about a thesaurus. It's a kind of dictionary for synonyms. There's online versions of them. Maybe you have one in the library. I don't know, but thesaurus is a dictionary of synonyms. So you can change 1 or 2 of the words, and that will change the language, but it'll keep the main idea, right? But it won't change the language a lot. And I told you, you need to change the language a lot. It'll change the language a little bit. Therefore, we cannot use number 1 only. It's not enough. The other thing is, again, we don't want to use synonyms for the keywords, the most important words of your topic. If you're writing about pizza, use the word pizza. Repeat it. Right? If we're talking about education of students, we want to use that word education. We don't want to change it. Students is a very specific kind of person. We don't want to change that. Those are key words of our topic. We can change other words. We can change grammar words like verbs, right? But the key words of your topic, don't change those. Okay? Here's an example. The tiger quickly disappeared into the trees. We want to keep that idea, but we want to change the language. So we're going to use a synonym. In this case, our topic is tiger. So we don't want to call it the big cat, because there are many kinds of big cats. If we're talking about tigers, we use the word tiger. But we can change a verb easily. The tiger vanished into the forest. And we can change the word trees, forest, right? The same idea is preserved here. So we've changed the verb. We did not change the main keyword, which is tiger. Trees, forest, that's not important for our topic. But the word tiger is, so don't change that. Okay? That's a slightly different sentence. Now, it's not super different, but it's different enough with just 2 words changed. Okay, so synonyms are powerful, but these 2 sentences are quite different, so that's good. But you know, if we have a whole paragraph, changing synonyms won't be enough, right? So this is why we need 6 techniques, not just 1. Let's look at number 2. So technique number 1, use synonyms. I think we all know this. Technique number 2, change the verb to negative or change the negative to positive. Sorry, that's incomplete. Change the negative to positive. So we know about positive and negative verbs. We talked about that earlier. I like pizza. I do not like pizza. So you can change a sentence a lot by changing the verb to negative. So for example, if I said, if the sentence is, I do not like pizza, that's a negative sentence. That's the one I read in the book. I want to paraphrase that. I can change do not like to a positive grammar. I hate pizza. Right? So change the negative structure, negative grammar, to positive grammar using a word that meaning is negative. That's a technique. Or if you want to paraphrase that, you can change that to I do not eat pizza ever. Right? I do not eat. I hate pizza. I do not eat pizza ever. It's obvious that I hate it. So changing the verb grammar from negative to positive or positive to negative is a great way to change the sentence. The meaning is kept though. There's no difference really between I hate pizza and I do not eat pizza ever or I never eat pizza. The meaning is really the same. The bottom line is you don't eat pizza. We saw this example earlier, right? The negative sentence, I do not like pizza. If you want to paraphrase that, you can say, I hate pizza. Same meaning, really. I do not like or I hate pizza, but the grammar is now positive grammar, right? Or you could say, I dislike pizza. Dislike, the meaning is negative, right? It means you don't like pizza, but the way the grammar works is there's no not or do. It's a positive grammar. So we can change a sentence from negative grammar to positive grammar, or we can change it a positive sentence like this. I swim every day. We can change that to a negative sentence. Sorry. I swim every day. That's positive grammar. Negative would be, I never miss a swim. I never miss it. That tells us the same information. It tells us that every chance you have, you swim. So change the grammar from negative to positive or positive to negative. That's paraphrasing. We keep the same meaning, right? The meaning is the same, but we're changing the grammar structure. But you notice also we keep the keywords, pizza. We're not going to call it bread, tomato, cheese pie. We're calling it pizza. Here I use the verb swim. That's the main idea, so we don't want to change that word. I never miss a swim. If the focus of your writing is swim, keep that word. Change other words. Okay? Now this takes practice, but it's good practice for using negative and positive grammar. Negative grammar, I do not. Positive grammar, I do. So we can change the verb. Here's an example. Here's the original one. The nervous student was awake all night. So this is a positive sentence, right? Was awake. It's past tense, but it's not a negative structure. We don't have not here. We don't have never. Positive grammar. Let's use a negative grammar to make the same idea. The nervous student didn't sleep all night. Okay? We keep the main idea, the student, the nervous student. That's a pretty specific idea. Let's keep that. But let's change the verb structure from a positive to a negative. The nervous student was awake all night. Didn't sleep. Same idea. So we change the language, keep the idea. Change the language, keep the idea. Nervous student, that's a pretty important idea. That's a keyword. We don't change that. We could change all night. It's not that important, right? Was awake all night. Was awake from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. Same idea. So that's something we could change also. We could change it with a synonym. By the way, synonyms can be one word exchange another word, or one word exchange with a phrase, several words, right? All night, we could change to like a phrase like from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. You know, you can change it with a phrase. It doesn't have to be word for word. Okay, so second paraphrasing technique, change the verb structure from negative to positive or positive to negative. Okay, number 3, guys. Excuse me. This is a little trickier, a little more advanced, but it's very powerful. Change the voice. Right? I think we've learned about voice, not verb tense, but passive to active, right? Active to passive, passive to active. So that's not verb tense, it's what we call voice or aspect. And it does change the sentence grammar a lot, but it keeps the meaning. It does change emphasis a little bit, but for creating a variety of sentences, it's very useful. So let's see an example. So here's our original. The letter was sent by the university on August 3rd. The letter was sent by the university. So this is a passive. So we're going to change it from passive to active. So when we say the letter was sent, the letter didn't send anything. The university is the sender, right? The university is like a group of people. It's an organization. A letter can't move on its own. So this is a passive sentence. The true subject is the university. The university did the action. The letter received the action. So this is passive. Let's change it to active. The university sent the letter on August 3rd. The university sent the letter. That's an active sentence, right? The verb is one word in past tense. With passive, we have the be verb and the past participle. Was sent by the subject. So that changes the grammar of a sentence, but it keeps the main idea. We know that a letter went from university to somewhere on August 3rd. Now, August 3rd is one of those numbers. It's like data. It's a date. We don't want to paraphrase a date. It's too specific. It's too important, right? The letter, well, that's a keyword. We could say mail. It probably wouldn't change the meaning too much. By the university is pretty important because they're the ones that sent it. So I wouldn't change that with a synonym. Okay, so this is another good paraphrasing technique. Change passive to active or active to passive, depending on which one you start with. And if you're writing a paragraph or an essay, mix it up. Change some originals from passive to active, change some original actives to passives. Creates a good variety. Number 4. This one's very useful. And this tests and uses your knowledge. Change the parts of speech. Change nouns into verbs. Change verbs into nouns. Nouns into adjectives. So you're using the same word, but in a different form. Okay? This is a little trickier, right? But as you learn more English, you'll be able to do this more easily, right? I think we had an example earlier. Yeah, we had the word to know, the verb know. That's the verb. But we have the noun form of it, knowledge, right? We even have adjective forms like knowing, the participle adjective, knowing. So we can change it into different word forms or parts of speech. Here's another example. The teacher helped the student finish her class registration. Okay, class registration. Registration is a noun. It ends with T-I-O-N, shun. That's a very common ending for nouns in English. Registration. So we're going to change one word, registration. We're going to change it into a different part of speech. Right now it's a noun. Okay? Oops, registration form. Registration form. So to enter a class, you need to fill out a registration form, and that's a noun. Okay, let's change it into a verb. The teacher helped the student register for classes. Okay? The idea is kept. We keep the idea. The teacher helps the student to do what? To finish her class registration form. Well, the second sentence, the teacher helped the student register. Well, how do we register? By filling out the form. So the same idea is expressed, but the language is quite different. And we've just changed one word into a different form. Right? Very powerful. Now, this example, we've only done it with one word, right? We could do it with other words. For example, the verb help, helped. Help can also be a noun. We could say the teacher gave the student help, right? So there's a lot you can do with this particular technique, number 4. Very powerful. But, you know, you need a little bit of English knowledge for this. So, you know, work towards this as you learn more forms of words. But it requires a bit of advanced vocabulary knowledge. So keep learning vocabulary. When you learn a word, learn its other parts of speech. Registration, register. Okay, that's number 4. Let's go to number 5. Combine sentences. Right? If you see 2 sentences, you could make it into one sentence. You can paraphrase by making it into one sentence. You could take one long sentence from a source, a book, and split it into 2. Right? Changes the language. And you can use connecting words like however and therefore, or and, or but, or because, to combine the shorter phrases and sentences. So here's our original. Paraphrasing, we have 2 sentences now. Paraphrasing is a skill students need to learn, period. It is an important part of academic writing. So we're going to connect these 2 sentences and make it into one. Paraphrasing, comma, which is a skill students need to learn, comma, is an important part of academic writing. Instead of having 2 separate sentences, now we have one long one. And we didn't use any other techniques, right? But we could change that long sentence even more with synonyms, parts of speech, right? There's a lot we can do to change the language. So it doesn't say that here, but we can do it in both directions. We can combine 2 sentences or 3, but we could also take one big sentence and break it up into 2 or 3 small parts. We can do it in both directions. Okay, here's the last one. This is a little bit more advanced and tricky, but it can be done. I would suggest practicing with shorter sentences, but you can move parts of a sentence to change the sentence structure. For example, you could start a sentence with the word yesterday. Yesterday, I made pizza. Oh, yesterday can move. We can say, I made pizza yesterday. That's a paraphrase. That's technique number 6. You can move adverbs, right? For example, the word often. We can say, I often make pizza. Often, I make pizza. We can say, I often make, or I make pizza often, right? If you can move a word, move it. It changes the sentence. It changes the language, but keeps the main idea. Okay, here's an example. And remember, guys, we're not going to use one of these techniques alone. It's not enough to paraphrase a lot of writing. We want to use a combination of the 6 techniques. Here's the original. Yesterday, I stayed in the library until midnight and finished my homework. By now, you guys have learned a lot of grammar. I know because we've talked about a lot of different grammar structures. And for example, we've talked about how to use the fanboys, right? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, to connect 2 sentences. Well, especially with words like and, we can connect them, but we can also move the two sentences. So if you can, that's a way to paraphrase. I finished my homework at midnight in the library yesterday. Right? So here they've moved the word yesterday to the end of the sentence. Simple technique, but it changes the language. And if you combine other techniques like synonyms, this could be very useful. I think we have a synonym here. I finished my homework at midnight. Yeah, so the original says, I stayed in the library until midnight. Well, if you finished at midnight, that means you stayed until midnight. Same idea. So they've actually eliminated words, deleted words, and kept the same idea. If you can do that, great. Any questions about this so far, guys? That's our 6 techniques, 6 paraphrasing techniques. When you use them, combine them and mix them, use them together, you can change a lot. It takes practice, of course, but this is how you change the language, but keep the main idea. Change the language, keep the main idea, which, as we said earlier, is one of your key responsibilities. Where are we? Right? You have to change the language substantially or a lot, and you must preserve or keep the key terms and data as well as the basic idea. Keep the basic idea. Right? Number 3, we can ignore for now. So let's review. We had synonyms, change the verb to negative, from positive to negative or negative to positive. Number 3 was change the voice from active to passive or passive to active. You can change the parts of speech. You can change nouns into verbs, verbs into nouns, nouns into adjectives if it's possible. Not every word changes like that, but some can change. Registration form, the noun becomes the verb. 5th technique was combine sentences, make 2 sentences into 1, make 1 sentence into 2, right? Here we combine 2 into 1, kept the same idea, just use different structure. So paraphrasing is an academic skill that you use in college a lot and definitely in business life. And this is where you use grammar. This is why we need to learn different grammar structures. This is why we need to learn passive and active, negative and positive verb structure. This is why we need this stuff, so that we can paraphrase, so that we can change language, so that we can say the same thing different ways, right? So paraphrasing is great practice for you guys to really solidify, reinforce your grammar skills. Because you have to use your grammar knowledge to paraphrase.